Getting ready for week number 3 of the high school football season in 8-man, Devin Albertson, Anthony Crane. Welcome back. You guys are still surviving through 3 weeks now, plus a jamboree, and no one's really eaten you alive yet.
Not yet.
Anthony's waiting.
Well,
They've got a few nibbles out of
It's-
Anthony so far.
it's been quieter, It's only been a day, but
Hey, years young. Let's just go into kind of the controversy of the week so far, shall we? Since I don't have a say in this poll anymore, we'll just
you need
dive
to be
into
more
the poll.
specific on controversy. And
Well, we'll start with the media poll, since you media people, and I got kicked out of it, had your media poll this week. We'll just go down the list, and you guys just give your thoughts where everybody was placed. This will be fun. All right, number 1, Drexel. Got 5 first-place votes. Probably still rightfully number 1, right?
I think so. Anthony does not believe so. Anthony thinks they shouldn't even be ranked at this point. I'm kidding. He has them at 5, I think, in his poll. But based on the
I
response
can tell you
everybody
right
gets,
now
that
the other top 4 teams would score 80 points on that defense right now. Like it was so like I explained to them, because we had this conversation yesterday, because I was interested in like what everyone else was seeing versus what I see. And a lot of it I feel like is the top 5 are really good. And so Drexel is still really good. I'm not saying they're not. So until things shake up there, somebody loses a weird game, they play each other, whatever, I think a lot of people are going to keep them all where they are. I don't see it that way. I kind of go off what you do week to week. And for me, there was some concern with them getting back to that championship mentality this summer. And then watching them, that was a concern for me. Jacob Coffey's great.
Yeah.
But Jacob Coffey can't do that against North Andrew and Worth County and Platte Valley. Like, as great as he is, and we saw that in the championship game, it took him throwing the ball and continuously pulling rabbits out of his hat for them to win that game. And there's still, Dean was giving me crap Thursday night about Dangringer and all that, but they're still short a weapon that they had last year. And defensively, they're not the same. And it wasn't just that they were getting beat, because that happens in 8-man football. It was just the real lack of aggression. The tackling was really poor. And as much as I love Lockwood and what they can do, they're not a top 10 team. And so what do they do when they face Archie or anyone else, in that top 5? And for me, that's why I didn't have them at 1.
Yeah, and for me, I'm giving Drexel maybe a little bit of a pass for that Lockwood game, because Lockwood, the first game, came out in a completely different offense. They went full Josh Peterson and just changed their offense in a week and said, we're going to go 4 wide receivers and just disregard the running game, because as bad as Drexel's defense was on Thursday, you still can't run the ball versus the Bobcats very efficiently going forward week in, week out. And I think that's why Lockwood said, well, you know what? We have athletes. We're going to put them out in space. The one weakness for Drexel is their secondary. And I think Coach Dean will make some adjustments when he goes to play Archie, whether that's moving Coffee to more coverage kind of deal, playing more coverage in the back end kind of deal. I'm not sure what the adjustments are going to be. I think he'll make those adjustments a little bit. I just think Lockwood's kind of a bad matchup for them because of the way they threw the ball there against Drexel. Besides Archie and maybe Worth County, the other teams in the top 5, Platte Valley, North Andrew, I think played more of Drexel's strengths. If you look at them there, running the football, ground and pound, we saw that last year. It was different years, but King City was a very similar way to what North Andrew and Platte Valley were last year. And Jacob Coffey did do it all last year versus King City, ran for like 384 yards against the GRC defense. That was pretty good last year as well. So I get what he's saying about Drexel. They do maybe an offensive weapon short compared to what North Andrew and Worth County and Archie have. But the 2 weapons they do have, I trust a lot in Coffey and Dayringer. And then I think other guys are going to have to step up, as he said there. But they're also relying on a running back right now. It's a freshman in Colby Nichols, who I think will get better as the year goes on, as he gets a little more mature as well. So I still believe in Drexel until proven otherwise kind of deal. But I don't think we'll have a good view of them until about week 6 when they play Archie, and then later on in the year when they play, I think, St. Paul Lutheran. So they're still going to be in the top 5. They're going to be my number 1 team until if they're struggling with Rich Hill or Appleton. Then it might change a little bit for them. But them, and they were also that first quarter versus Lockwood. They were up 30-0 and dominating that game, and then the wheels kind of fell off. I watched Archie play Lockwood week 1, and Archie struggled a bit early on with Lockwood, and then put the clamps on. So it was kind of two different versions of the game. Whatever one you're more impressed with, there were still dominant points for Archie and Drexel. It was at different parts of the game, is based on what I saw. So I still like North Angel a lot. I mean, I have them too. They're going to get 8 yards a pop anytime they want to with Ecker, Goff, and Linville. They want 8 yards. They're getting 8 yards. Their line is that physical and that bulky up front.
So looking at the poll, North Andrew had 3 first-place votes. I don't remember what last week's had. First-place votes for them. They had 1 last week. So is people just changing? Still Anthony. So are people coming around to more North Andrew, or what do you think that is with the change from 1 first-place vote now? Obviously, LeBlanc's a top 10 team too, and they beat them kind of, the way they did, is kind of physical. Is that what kind of changing and getting more favorites going toward North Andrew at this point too?
Based on what I heard from the two guys, it was they have 2 top 10 wins to start the year, and that gave them a little bit of advantage over beating a Liberal and Lockwood kind of deal. Lockwood's 0-2 now, 2 losses to Archie and Drexel, of course, but they view the King City and LeBlanc games as higher quality opponents, and they beat King City in a grind-out game, and they dominated LeBlanc. So I think that's what got North Andrew over the top, based on what I heard from the other 2 voters. And then Anthony, of course, really likes North Andrew and what they bring to the table.
All right, so I'm going to butt in, because that kind of brings me to an idea and a conversation just popped in my mind. Does that go back to the historic thought process of 8-man football? We know what Northwest Missouri, Anthony knows where I'm going with this. We don't know what the rest of the state looks like sometimes because they're new to 8-man football, or it takes a few years to get adjusted. Is that where maybe some of this is coming in? Because we've known for years the North Andrews, the Worth Counties, the Stanberries, King Cities, they're all going to be up there. We don't know if are from the other parts of the state.
Could be. I mean, there's no one. I mean, I think maybe half the voters watch football in the South. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to get down there to see them. So you don't really know. And really the South's problem is, and I don't even know if it's a big problem, because even up north, you've had Mountain City, Southwest Livingston had a year. Then you have, Worth County. Like, it is very top heavy up north.
Mm-hmm.
They just think the rest of the North is still better than the South. I think they're wrong. But, that is part of the South's problem, is they're also top heavy. But then you look at teams like, I don't know, Appleton City, Osceola, and they're not good. But that's also, when there's that North and South, it's Osceola playing Stanberry, Osceola playing Albany. You don't see Worth County going down to play Drexel or Archie,
right.
or LeBlanc did, and that was a really good game.
Love that for those teams, just because it gives us a little more north-south kind of deal with that.
Yeah, and I think that
the drive too. You don't want to make the drives either, because those can get 3 to 4 hours at a time.
Well, you know what? Osceola gives you cheese. So
I stopped there when I went to Branson a couple weeks ago. Stopped on the way down. There was some actually very good opportunities and very good options there. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I think
the most even when we get the north south.
You're stepping over me again.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
It's
we
like
went from cheese to seriousness again. This is the worst.
It's like Rich Hill, Pattonsburg at this point. 2 teams that are viewed maybe bottom of their conferences. They get to play this year. I think that's kind of a good kind of mesh game to kind of see where each one. I think Pattonsburg's a better team this year, just because I think the bottom of the GRC is still a little bit stronger than the bottom of the WeMo. But if you look at 275, there is a big gap between EA, Platte Valley, and some of the rest of the teams in the conference. We've seen that the first couple of weeks there with Southholt struggling with Worth County and Rockport struggling with Platte Valley. There's a pretty good gap there between the top of the 275 and the middle and the bottom of the conference kind of deal. So I think that's kind of where we all kind of look. As Anthony said, for 20 years, you saw 4 teams dominate Northwest Missouri. And then whenever a team would get to the state semifinal, like Drexel, the first year in 8-man, they played Mountain City and they got absolutely rolled. It's like, well, yeah, 95% of teams that Mountain City plays did get rolled that year. Like North Andrew played within 30, and that was about it in the playoffs kind of deal like that. It's like, it's not really a Drexel problem. It's an everybody playing those elite teams problem with that. That's why it's kind of Drexel winning state last year did earn the South some respect, but respect is slow to earn and hard to lose kind of deal with some of these teams that we look at as historically good programs.
And it's just a pride thing.
Yeah.
Like the North is proud because really they started 8-man football in Missouri. So it's going to take a while to kind of wrestle that away, and really just for the South to kind of catch up on the style that you played 8-man football, because it's not the same. It's not like the South can't play football. Lamar, Webb City, those schools have dominated football. It's just now they're playing a different style and trying to figure that out. And a lot of these schools, there's a reason they moved down to 8-man. It's because they can't compete in 11-man. And so now you're waiting on talent to come through. Also, that talent to adjust to a different style of football.
And I think I've told people before with this, the athletes between the North and the South aren't that different when the skill guys, when you're looking at Breyer, McIntyre, and Jacob Coffey versus Landon Gardner and Ecker up north and guys like that. The skill guys are pretty similar. The difference that I've seen the last couple of years is the line play, and just they don't make them like they usually do at Worth County down in Osceola. They're just big old farm boys. I mean, it's just different kind of deal. The line play is what's been kind of the difference, and being able to sustain that over a full season has been the kind of the biggest difference between North and South. With that, I think that's what I've seen, at least personally. There are some good linemen down south. Not saying that they're just fewer and far between than just the replenishing you see in some of the northern teams that are towards the top of the leagues.
Well,
it goes back to what you said too. Like they don't make them like they do in North County, which is the problem for everyone else in the North.
Exactly, it's a problem for Pattonsburg to play them every year because we don't have boys that look like that. Like that kid's huge.
It also comes from building the program over 20 plus years of that's what you did. You farm kid, and then you went and played football. I mean, you're not going to have guys built like that very often. When you do, it's like, whoa, who's that kid?
Exactly.
You'll see those guys. Let's run through the rest of the poll. We'll get to a couple other things real quick. Number 3, Platte Valley. Number 4, Archie. Number 5, Worth County. 6, East Atchison. 7, Albany. 8, tie for 7, Bishop of Lawn. I can't read and I didn't vote. Number 9, King City. Number 10, Org. Rounding out the poll. Anything else stand out to you guys in this poll this week besides me not knowing that there was a tie?
I was kind of curious with LeBlanc still being above King City in the poll kind of deal. We saw them both play North Andrew, and one team was up at halftime and lost by 2 touchdowns. The other one got kind of controlled from start to finish. That was interesting to me. I had King City above LeBlanc in my ballot there for it. But other than that, it looked pretty similar. I think all 10 of those teams were in my top 10 in some order. The top 6 were in the same order, I think, maybe 7. And then the last 3 spots were a little bit different for me. But I don't think it's too big of a surprise. I do like Oric. I think they're a team that, based on their schedule, is going to rack up 8-9 wins in the regular season. They're going to be really good there, and they got the leading rusher in the state right now in Jackson Miller by about 200 yards over Hayden Ecker. And if you have 200 yards more than Hayden Ecker for 2 weeks, you're doing something right there. So I do like Oric. I know Anthony probably won't pick against them the rest of the year because it didn't go well for him last week. But it's be interesting to see what they do going forward.
I had Archie at 2. So, yeah.
Boy, you're me this year. You're me.
I didn't just pick the defending state champion.
Every preseason poll, I did that. It's just what it is. It's a preseason poll. All right.
Yeah,
I'll respect it.
The upcoming season.
Yeah, but I'll still respect it until the game happens. Then I'll be okay. I'll reevaluate. That's what I'll do. I guess
even if the state champion graduates 12 seniors in their entire offense.
Well, I mean that happens, right? You just shift it back whenever it's done.
The one thing that I found interesting was Stanberry losing all respect. And part of me gets it, and part of me thinks they're being a bit harsh. The reason I kind of get it is because Albany did that with one player, with some of their better offensive weapons getting hurt. Mm-hmm. And boy, I love Kemper Klein. I think he's fantastic. But boy, you give up 50 points when it's just basically one guy. That's a problem. And maybe it started week 1, and while they did come back the next day, they were struggling with St. Joe Christian. So I don't know, because I haven't seen Stanberry yet. I don't know if they're trying to run the wrong offense. I don't know, because they don't have the size they've had in the past. And so if they're still trying to power through people, especially Schieber, who as good as he is a little guy. If that's what they're trying to do, they're going to struggle with that. And maybe it's just as simple as that. They're adjusting to a different style of play because they don't have that size. I'm not sure yet.
And I think they don't have the size, and they have a sophomore quarterback this year who's trying to still adjust kind of deal. There's some growing pains with that. I still like Sheber and Gavin Cameron there at running back there. There's two really good backs. I think they struggled a little bit more defensively this year. And kind of as you said, Anthony, I think it's not just the Albany loss, because losing to Albany is nothing to hang your head about kind of deal. I think you couple that with their struggles in week 1 versus St. Joe Christian. I think that's what kind of got them. I had St. Stanbury as my first team out of my top 10. So with a kind of a chance with them playing at King City this week to jump back in very easily with a win over the Wildcats if they do that at home. So I think Stanbury is still really good. They were the odd team. I considered their Stanbury or LeBlanc their week 1 for the 10th spot there. I just kept LeBlanc in there. I didn't want to ding them for losing to North Andrew compared to losing to Albany kind of deal, because I think North Andrew is a different tier in that kind of deal. So it's my thinking for that 10th spot.
How much does maybe Albany? Go ahead, Anthony.
He's just making fun of me.
No. Yeah. We talk about Albany all the time as that team that's just on the bubble. Bye, Devin. Devin?
Sorry, give me a second.
Devin.
My stand toppled over.
We saw it in slow motion. It's pretty cool. Devin is okay. All right,
the good news is my phone's not broken. That's the real win.
Well, I saw. I'm like, oh, there it goes. Then there was really nothing stopping it at that point. I was going to watch and enjoy the moment.
I got size 13 feet. And I just kicked my stand and it just went, just gone.
Don't do that.
Okay, we're back.
All right. Going back to what I was formulating, I think. How much of this too? Maybe Albany's kind of getting over those hurdles, because was it 2 years ago they lost like 4, 5, 6 games by 1 score? Mm-hmm. I think that. But I mean, obviously, if their kids graduate and things can change, but they've been close in the GRC for a few years. But again, it's Stanbury, Worth County, King City, all right there. That just been a little bit better. Is this Albany maybe getting the best of the GRC this year too?
Well, the coaches told us all summer to watch out for Albany. Now, I thought I heard a little bit of that last year, and it didn't come to fruition. But yeah, like you said, 2 years ago, if not for COVID, there was no one that wanted to play Albany. And, like Devin and I talked about recently, is Kemper Klein is the best player that no one really talks about. So, yeah, I mean, maybe they're just finally getting it, because Fountain is a great coach. They had a ton of kids. It was kind of seeing if those kids were going to be good, though, or if they can get anything out of them. Because last year they had one of the biggest teams in the state. And so maybe last year was a bit of a learning curve, and then this year it's finally coming together.
And I think we'll know more about them week 4 and 5 when they play Worth County and Platte Valley. I mean, obviously that's 2 huge games for them, but I think that's when they can kind of either establish themselves maybe in that top tier, or even if they just play close to those teams and just give them a really good challenge that they could have 2 losses and still stay in our poll, because like, hey, with their schedule, who else would be 3-2 at that point with win over Stanbury and then close losses to Worth County and Platte Valley? I mean, because even when Mound City was in their heyday and Albany was down a little bit, talking to Mound City people, like Albany gave us fits in certain situations because they're so well coached. And I think they have that still with the explosiveness of Kemper Klein. And I do like their middle linebacker and Truman Reynolds. He's the guy that also gets kind of overlooked. You can't miss him because he wears number 75 and plays middle linebacker. So that's always kind of awesome. I love the weird numbers playing out of position. But yeah, Albany, they're a team that we're keeping an eye on this year because, I mean, Mound City, Woco, Platte Valley, St. Joe Christian, North Andrew, King City. They have a tough schedule, but if they can get through that, they're going to be battle-tested for the playoffs. Their only problem is they got to play most of those teams again in districts to get out of districts kind of deal. So they're kind of in a tough spot there with District 4 just being brutally tough.
It is a bit of an advantage because, like Devin was talking about East Atchison, if you look at their schedule, it is super soft. We'll see how they do against South Holt this week. But then they don't play a tough team until, the final 2 weeks of the year. They get Stanbury and Platte Valley. And I assume that final game will be for the conference title. So we'll see. I don't know if Albany's better off by getting this tough competition before they head to districts, or if it's better to be East Atchison, where it's a little lighter throughout the year until you get to that same district where, and I was talking to Barons. I was like, you may have the 6th or 7th best team in the state, but also the 5th or 6th best team just in your district.
Yeah. It's tough. It's brutal in that district. I mean, you said there. I know they have the rival game versus Rockport coming up there, but they should be heavy favorites in that game based on what we saw with Rockport, Platte Valleys. So EA is going to be able to cruise here. They're going to, I think, defensively, they're going to keep holding people under 10 points a game all the way up till week 8, 9 kind of deal. So I'm intrigued to see if their defense can keep this up kind of deal with that, because it's been very impressive so far through 2 weeks against Southwest and Nolly Valley. 2 teams kind of towards the bottom of the conference, but they did what they're supposed to do in those games. It just completely dominates. So I give them credit for that coming this year. And as Anthony was showing there on his Twitter page, they fly around on defense. I think it's the Litherbury kid at linebacker. He has stepped in for Caleb Merriweather, which I thought was the biggest kind of question mark was defensively at middle linebacker. How do they replace Merriweather, who is a really good middle linebacker? And they really haven't skipped a beat so far with that. And that's impressive for Charlie for stepping up there, and also just the kids around them, the system they use on defense is just they fly the ball. I mean, they're active kids on defense.
This week will be different. This week will be different compared to the first 2. I don't know how good Southold is, but they're better than what they've seen.
All right, final thoughts from you guys. I'm glad I had to redo that because I said final thoughts and that was not right. So thanks for interrupting me, Anthony. That was actually a nice save. Even though
Good job, Anthony. We're proud of you.
And then you just repeated it, so
I'm honest with it. There's no outtakes.
It's a real journalist right there.
Big J. Not a soft J either.
Here we go.
No
Number 1 high school football show in the city.
That's right.
Oh. So what's our final thoughts?
Here? Yeah.
So what are our final thoughts here? This is like what we're looking forward to week 3 kind of deal? What games pique our interest?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Not much guidance here, but we'll go with it on there.
None.
So again, I'm going to King City at Stanberry. I think it's a good gauge game for both teams. Both teams have tough losses in conference early in the year. If they want to stay in the conference race there, they got to win this game at this point, or you're probably 2 losses and you're on the outside looking in for a GRC title, or even King City has a little bit more of a leeway there in their district with seeding, with LeBlanc and Org probably being the next 2 best teams over there, followed by probably Bramer and Pattonsburg. So King City has a little more leeway when it comes to district standings, but Stanberry, you don't want to be the best 5-4 team in the state with losses to teams in your district conference kind of deal there, and you're stuck as the 7-8 seed in that district. And that's just absolutely brutal. So I think this is a must-win game for Stanberry. Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun football game. I mean, I think King City can struggle to score at times, but their defense is legit. I mean, Anthony saw it there, some of the highlights there versus North Andrew. That defense is very good. So I'm really intrigued to see how that kind of goes there on Friday night. And then I'll also keep my eye on, as I said earlier, in the week with Sweet Springs Bramer, kind of a gauge game for both those teams as well. Bramer off a big loss, Sweet Springs, they'll just be a third 8-man game. We're not sure how good they are at this point with the schedule they've played. This is their first kind of true test of the season. I know I've talked to other coaches in that conference, and they're kind of intrigued by Sweet Springs, and maybe they could compete for a conference title with St. Paul, North Shelby, and Oric. So this is a game that they have to win to kind of prove they belong in that class kind of deal with that.
Oric's going to run the table. They're going to smoke everyone the rest of the way.
That's a team. Go Bearcats.
Cats by 90.
There we go. We got him to say it. There we go.
All right.
I'll be honest. The rest of the schedule is very shaky. For years I thought East Hatch and South Holt would produce a good game. It is not. I'm also not certain that'll happen. LeBlanc and Worth County. Boy, that's tough. To not only have to deal with North Andrew physically just beating you, but then you get a few days before you have to go to Worth County. I don't know. They could. Like I said, I think they match up a little bit better. Worth County has some size.
They're pretty
but
quick,
they're not. Yeah, but they're not North Andrew.
Right.
And I do believe that LeBlanc has the skill guys that can kind of hang with the McIntyres on the outside. And I think it'd be a good test for Worth County because South Holt wasn't great, obviously, but LeBlanc is better than South Holt. And they had the skill guys. And as we saw last week, even with that, disadvantage, Lena Gardner is still really, really good.
Yeah.
So I think that one could be interesting. And maybe last week was good for LeBlanc, a bit of a wake-up call, and now maybe a better understanding of how you handle that size. Because I thought even in that game for a while, they kind of held their own. They weren't stopping North Andrew, but they also weren't getting run over like I thought they might.
Yeah, and I think the one thing with Worth County and North Andrew kind of comparison with LeBlanc, as you said, LeBlanc maybe matched up better with Worth County, but Worth County is better adapt to absolutely blow you out and run you out the field more than North Andrew, just because North Andrew is content with, hey, 8 yards. We'll see if we can get more maybe after that, but we're getting 8 yards. Worth County, they might take it to the house every other play. That's the difference between Worth County and North Andrew. I think North Andrew may be a tougher team to beat in the long run because you can't ever put them away, and they're okay with having the ball for 80% of the ball game and just kind of driving the ball slowly and just slowly killing you with that. I think that's kind of what North Andrews kind of thing is.
I also think that was intentional on North Andrews' part.
I mean, it might have been
just what I've heard from
I think North Andrews likes playing that style of football.
I don't think they wanted 10 yards of carry. Like I think they could have. Like I don't know. And like we talked about,
I think they do like that style. I think they like that style. Just like we're just going to physically impose you and win by 20 and deal with it.
But you saw like when they wanted to, Hayden Eckert, again, that's why I was so impressed, was like he was on one leg, was like, screw it, I'll get 50 yards here. So I just think that if North Andrew probably wanted, and I also get your point, like they don't have Dylan McIntyre, but they do have Gunnar Lawrence, who is a great athlete as well. But yeah, I don't.
I think North Andrew is more consistent. I just think Worth County has more guys who can go the distance there. Because if you look at Andrew Goff, he's okay with getting 4 or 5 yards and just running to your face every time.
Fullback.
He's okay with that.
Well, he's gassed after 4 yards. So.
I mean, I'm not saying anything about that.
Alone, okay?
Exactly. I love Andrew Goff, but he is okay with just running through people, 5 yards, good to go. I think Heitshu and Castival and the McIntyre kids, they're more big play explosive guys. They have more of those than just Ecker and sometimes Linville there for North Andrew. I think there's just more options for that, so they can get up on you faster than a North Andrew would or even cares to. North Andrew just care about winning the game. They don't care if they win by 25 and just completely control the game, or they win by 40 and it happens. Cool.
Hold on.
I think that's the difference between the two.
Time out here. Let it be known. That was a joke about Andrew Goff. Love Andrew Goff. So far this year, he has been the most impressive linebacker I've seen.
He's very good.
Just a joke.
Yep. There we go. We're just a joke.
Fullbacks are people too, Anthony. Fullbacks are people too.
Well, is he a fullback if he's the only one in? Or is he a tailback?
He's a fullback.
He's the biggest back. He's shorter than the other two, I guess. But
But if you don't have a tailback,
he's Mike Allstott. He's a fullback who carries the ball sometimes. He's Mike Allstott. It's fine. You're welcome. He needs a neck roll now, though. That we call it Mike Allstott. If we can get Andrew Goff a neck roll, booyah. Let's go. Let's get it done.
Every time we played a guy with a neck roll, we're like, okay, this guy is terrifying, and he's going to eat us.
He's got 2 screws loose.
Listen, Lockwood has a guy, and it doesn't help because their defense is terrible. Mullet and a neck roll.
Oh, love it.
Wait, love it. A mullet and a neck brace? Not a neck brace, neck roll.
Neck roll.
It's time to end the final thoughts, because our final thoughts, I think, took 5 minutes.
I have very long thoughts. It's what happens.
You wanted to stir the pot.
Here we are.
I guess we did with a mullet and a neck roll. So, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.